Hi, everyone. I'm Kelly O'Horo, and this is Adaptable Behavior Explained. Welcome back to Adaptable, the show where we help you navigate life's challenges with greater awareness, resilience, and compassion. Today, we're continuing our series on infidelity, and we're talking about one of the most difficult parts of the healing journey. How do you rebuild trust after an affair? After discovery, many couples find themselves asking the same question: will I ever trust them again? And the answer is complicated because trust isn't restored by an apology. It's not rebuilt because enough time has passed. And it certainly isn't recovered because someone says, just move on. It's over and I told you that. Trust is rebuilt through thousands of small moments, consistent actions, emotional safety, and a willingness to create something entirely new. If you're the betrayed partner, you may be wondering if trust is even possible. And if you're the partner who had the affair, you may be wondering if you'll ever be forgiven. Today's episode is about understanding what trust really is, how it gets rebuilt, and why healing requires more than simply returning to what was. So let's start with a truth that can be difficult to hear, because the goal isn't to get back to the relationship you had before the affair, because that relationship is over. Now, before that statement feels discouraging, stay with me, because one of the most important ideas in trauma recovery and grief work and relationship healing is that something that once existed has to die before something new can be born. The relationship that existed before the affair is no longer. The assumptions are different, the innocence is gone, and the trust has been wounded. But that doesn't necessarily mean the relationship has to end. It means that if healing occurs, what emerges on the other side will be a totally different relationship. Not a restored version of the old one, but a brand new one. And sometimes that new relationship becomes healthier, deeper, and more emotionally honest than the one that existed before. In fact, my experience has been that when both members of the couple are willing to do the deep work that is required, they're some of the most amazingly strong, resilient master couples that I've ever worked with. So many couples unknowingly sabotage recovery because they're trying to go backward. They're trying to recreate the relationship that existed before the affair, but healing requires moving forward. The work isn't rebuilding the past, the work is building something new, and to do that, you have to understand how trust actually works. So that's what we're going to dig into now, is what trust really is. When people think about trust, they often think of it as a feeling. But Brené Brown teaches something very different. She says that trust is built in small moments over time. And in her work, she developed what she calls the braving framework for trust, which includes boundaries, reliability, accountability, vault, which is confidentiality, integrity, non-judgment, and generosity. And one of my favorite things that Brené Brown says is that trust is earned in the smallest of moments, not in the grand gestures, not in dramatic apologies. It's the daily moments, keeping promises or following through or being emotionally available, doing what you say you're going to do, being able to be counted on. That's actually how trust grows. And it's also how trust is rebuilt after betrayal. So trust is not a feeling, it's an experience. And one of the biggest misconceptions is that trust returns before action. In reality, the opposite is true. Most betrayed partners don't suddenly wake up one day and feel trusting. Trust develops after repeated experiences of safety and new neural pathways developing from the fractures of the compromised trust in the first place. So I want you to think about it this way. You don't trust because you feel safe. You trust because someone repeatedly demonstrates that they are safe, which then builds in you trustworthiness. This means that the partner who had the affair must understand something that's really important. Patience is part of repair. Trust isn't something you ask for. It's something that you demonstrate over and over and over again. And so I talked about in my last episode a little bit about transparency being a huge part and a factor in this work. And so now I'm going to talk about something called radical transparency. John and Julie Gottman talk extensively about rebuilding trust after betrayal with this concept. And one of the pillars of healing is transparency. Not because anyone wants to become a detective, but because secrecy was part of the initial injury. So after affair, transparency helps to restore safety. This might include voluntarily sharing your information or your location or your passwords. being open about schedules, answering questions honestly, even if you're worried about the judgment from your partner about what your answer might be. Eliminating secrecy and following through on agreements. Transparency is not punishment. Transparency is reassurance. It's a way of saying, I understand why trust was broken and I'm willing to help you to rebuild it. Now, some of you might be thinking that's an invasion of privacy, but I grossly disagree. If you've done something to fracture the confidence in a nervous system of someone that trusted you and believed in you and relied upon you, then the very least that you can do is give them full access to whatever they're afraid you could be hiding something from them, because it can help them start to understand the inner workings of you, and that's transparency. Now, the importance of emotional attunement is next, because clearly if there was a betrayal or infidelity that took place, there's a bit of disconnection from self and needs and emotional experiences. And so being attuned, meaning paying attention to the emotional workings of both yourself and your partner, are incredibly important in this part of the work. Dr. Sue Johnson, who's the founder of emotionally focused couples therapy and the kind of work that I do with couples, teaches that betrayal creates an attachment injury. And remember, attachment starts from our earliest relationships. And at its core, the injured partner is often asking internal questions like, do I matter to you? Can I count on you? And will you be there for me? Or am I safe with you? Rebuilding trust requires answering those questions repeatedly through action, not through words. And emotionally responsive partners don't avoid the pain. They're willing to sit in it. They're present for it. That means they're listening, they're validating, they're patient, they show empathy, and they're resisting the urge to become defensive or impatient. One of the greatest gifts of a hurting partner can receive is not an explanation, but it's just emotional presence for the injured party to be able to just feel however they need to feel without you taking it personally if you're the one who caused the harm. So now we're going to talk about why defensiveness destroys recovery and the chances of it. Because when couples struggle with rebuilding trust, defensiveness is often at the center of the problem. That person might hear, why can't you get over it? Or I've already apologized, or I've told you the details so many times. Why do you keep asking me? Or you're bringing this up again? Nothing I ever tell you or say is enough for you to get through this. And those responses just communicate frustration. They don't create safety, and defensiveness creates distance. So healing often, I would say even more than often, requires understanding that that betrayed partner isn't trying to punish. They're just trying to understand. They're really trying to figure out what they missed so that they can protect themselves again, which is a misnomer, because nothing about the way they did or didn't take care of you is why this happened if you never brought to them the attention that they needed to pay closer notice to. They're trying to feel safe again, and safety grows when pain is met with compassion rather than resistance. And so this is part of the process that you must be willing to get through, no matter how long it takes, in order to come through the other side. And again, digging deep for both persons is required. Now, this next section is really about the grief that has to happen related to the old relationship. And a lot of people try to skip this because they want to go back to what was comfortable, what was familiar, and what they were used to. And before trust can be rebuilt, there must be space to acknowledge what was lost. That old relationship being gone, the certainty, that innocence, those assumptions we could make about one another, and the unquestioned safety. Those are all gone, and that loss deserves grief. And many people stay stuck because one person wants to just move ahead while the other person is still trying to make sense of it all. So healing can accelerate when both people make room for the grief about what they've been through and what they've lost. Because grief is not the opposite of healing, it's part of the healing. And a lot of times people really try to shortcut that part of the healing process. And so building the new relationship is the goal. And once that grief is acknowledged and safety begins to return, something really amazing can happen. And it's some of my most favorite work to get to do with people who are really willing to get gritty and dig in and go to those deep, dark places that they avoided prior to the infidelity, because what happens on the other side is so beautiful, and they can really work hard to create that. That relationship can become much more honest and vulnerable and emotionally connected and deep and authentic. And that's why many experts talk about there's a lot of post-traumatic growth that can happen after infidelity if both persons are willing to do the work. And it's not because the affair was good, and it's not because the pain was necessary. It's because people who choose to grow through that experience rather than avoid it get to have so much benefit on the other side. And so the goal is the healing that follows after the affair, if this is something that you've gone through. And again, if only one of you is willing to do that work, it's not possible. I don't believe that one person can be solely responsible for the demise of a relationship, nor can one person be entirely capable of carrying the burden of all of the healing if another party in the relationship is unwilling to do the work, which there's a lot of grief that has to come with that as well. So if you're rebuilding trust after an affair, here's a few things to focus on this week. I want you to look for consistency, not perfection. Trust isn't built through perfection. It's rebuilt through consistency. So ask, am I seeing steady, reliable effort? Are there small actions that I can see? Because those matter way more than big promises. You want to focus on safety before trust grows and ask, what helps me feel emotionally safe right now? And make sure that you communicate that, because safety creates the conditions where trust can grow again. You want to remember that healing creates something new. Stop measuring your success by whether things feel like they used to, because that would actually be a red flag. If it feels the same as it used to, then likely that pattern that caused the infidelity in the first place could come back. And so we don't really want that. You want to ask, what kind of relationship are we creating now? Because the future doesn't have to look like the past to be healthy. In fact, it shouldn't. If you want to have improvement and come through the other side, it should look pretty different. So today we talked about how trust is rebuilt after an affair. We talked about Brene Brown's reminder that trust is built in small moments over time. And we talked about the Gottman's emphasis on transparency, in fact, radical transparency, to help with consistent trust-building behaviors. And we talked about Sue Johnson's understanding of betrayal as an attachment injury that requires emotional responsiveness and safety and consistency. And most importantly, we talked about the reality that the relationship that existed before the affair is gone, and that something has died and ended, and something new can be reborn. And although that can be heartbreaking, it creates that opportunity for new hope and something amazing to emerge. And the possibility of creating something stronger and more honest and more connected than what you had before is really the net benefit if both people are willing to work on it. So healing is really about courageously building a new normal in a new relationship. So if you found this show helpful, I'd love you to subscribe. Please leave a review or share it with someone that might benefit from this conversation. And I'd love to hear from you what you thought was the most important ingredient for you in rebuilding trust after betrayal. Leave us a comment or send a message. Connect with me on my other social medias, and we can continue the conversation. So thank you so much for your time today. And until next time, don't forget to lead with love. It'll never steer you wrong.